Actually, sir, I'm here at my own request.
Really? Why?
I've always wanted to see the frontier.
You want to see the frontier?
Yes, sir. Before it's gone.
Well, Elliot Ness had done it, the Untouchables had won it, and Dunbar was dancing with the wolves. The postman defeated the general, while the mariner swam around that water world. We're talking Costner, tin cup to Silverado, talking Costner, Bodyguard and Fandango. Robin Hood is making the rich pay, going off the board on draft day, talking swingbo, Wyatt Earp and JFK. Okay.
And we're back.
We're back. Slightly later than we thought, but we are back. And I mean, if you're binging these, maybe you are back after just moments. That's the way podcasts work.
Yeah.
You could have just listened to us and not known that we haven't technically done this now in 6 weeks instead of our usual 4.
Yeah, and maybe by the time you're listening to it, 8. Who knows?
We could be dead. We could be long dead of natural causes or otherwise.
The truth about podcasts is that we can release them whenever we fucking want.
This is true. Such saltiness to the people who are supporting us by listening.
For all you Costner fans out there,
Pardon the language.
We don't owe you more content.
Yeah, that's true. Until you start really chalking out the change for us here.
Yeah. But wouldn't that be really great if like we started a Costner podcast and just fell off right before Dances with Wolves? Just like,
And everyone will go, you know what? They covered Stacey's Nights, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
The people wanted to know about Malibu Hot Summer, and we gave them that, okay?
Yeah.
We owe them nothing.
And now they know. What more could they want?
Yeah.
Really, that was Costner's peak, and everything else is just extra jelly as far as I'm concerned.
Is that a saying that people say, or did you just make that up? I like that.
I just ripped,
like
baby.
That's like something like our dads would say. It's just extra jelly from here.
Who knows where it came from? That's right, folks. We're back for Dances with Wolves.
We are. It's a movie. We're going to talk about it.
This will be the only podcast we do where the podcast length is actually going to be shorter than the movie length because we keep running long.
We say that now, but that's true. Yeah. At least shorter than the director's cut of this film, which is 4 hours. But.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we promise you that.
Yeah.
Don't check the runtime right on your phone right now and be like 5.5 hours.
They're already into it.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So, do you want to you want to start with some quick stats on Dances with Wolves by the numbers?
Yeah. Well, Dances with Wolves, for those who don't know, is about a Civil War soldier who develops a relationship with a band of Lakota Indians, Sioux. Attracted by the simplicity of their lifestyle, he chooses to leave his former life behind to be with them. That's a little nutshell. That's the movie in a nutshell.
That's like the back of the... Remember when there would be VHSs? And the back, you'd have the synopsis on the back. That was like straight from the back of the VHS box.
Yeah, this had to be a double tape VHS for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was a big deal. You knew that was like a prestige picture. Braveheart, Titanic, those double VHSs.
Yeah. What was considered prestige back then kind of no longer is, but I think this one might still count.
Yeah. I think the Titanic would still be up there. People would still count that.
You think?
Oh yeah. Like it revolutionized a lot of things in the science of film, and
for sure.
It was like only Avengers beat it for box office too.
Hey, I'm never gonna beef on my boy James Cameron. Never.
That's fair. Yeah,
never.
I like my Leo and my Kate and my Billy Zane. But these people aren't in the movie we're talking about. This isn't talking Titanic. What are we doing here?
We got a different long movie to talk about.
Yeah, we said it wouldn't be that long, and then we spent 2 hours talking about Titanic before we got into the movie.
Well, that's why it's a 5-hour podcast. All right, folks. Guess who's in this movie? Kevin Costner.
I knew it.
Not only is he in it, he directed it too and produced it. This boy had his greasy fingers all over this guy. We've got a personal favorite of those north of the border. We got Graham Greene.
Yeah.
Classic. Indigenous Canadian actor. He's in Die Hard with a Vengeance. You might recommend.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot
Recognize
about
him
that.
for that. Oh yeah, he's in Wind River. Great movie.
Yeah, as is someone else from this cast.
Tantu Cardinal.
Yeah.
Also a great Indigenous Canadian actor. And he's also in Maverick. You remember Maverick?
Were we talking about Maverick? Or maybe I was talking about it with somebody else about that movie. I haven't watched it in a long time, but as a kid, that movie was so funny and so good. Jodie Foster, James Garner, and unfortunately for who he is as a person, Mel Gibson, but as a performance, very funny performance in that.
And also Graham Greene.
Yeah, that's right.
We got Mary McDonnell, who's, Donnie Darko, Margin Call, big cult following with Battlestar Galactica.
Well, and I didn't realize until I looked this up, the First Lady in Independence Day.
That is also true, yes.
Which was what I would have known her for as a kid.
Then, we got Tantu Cardinal, who is also in Wind River with Graham Greene. She's also in Legends of the Fall. Yep. She does a lot of stuff here in Canada. She's very good. Another Canadian actor, Maury Chaykin, who plays the Major, the shell-shocked Major. Yeah, he's also was in My Cousin Vinny. He's the guy who cooks the grits. If you remember My Cousin Vinny.
I've actually never seen it.
I
know I've been meaning to. It's on Netflix a lot, and it's one of those ones where I'm like, I'll get to that. I know it's really
Cancel
good.
Dances with Wolves. We're just talking.
All right, let's talk about Titanic and talking.
You go watch it. Come back.
Talking Pesci would be a good second show once we're done.
Whoa. And then another great actor. He's got there's some other actors that we'll bring up as we go, but a guy I wanted to give a shout out to, Wes Studi, who is a phenomenal actor. He has a smaller part in this. He plays the kind of lead Pawnee. He's also in Last of the Mohicans, was in Geronimo, played Geronimo, was in Heat. Love me some Wes Studi. The movie was directed by Kevin Costner.
And in his directorial debut, I believe.
In his directorial debut, yeah.
I don't know if this is his production debut.
Well, he was an executive producer on the last movie we watched, Revenge.
Right, yeah, that's right. And he almost directed that. He wanted to direct that originally.
But Tig Productions, which is his production company, this is their first film.
Pretty good first movie to come out of the gates with as a production company.
He produced it with his pal Jim Wilson, and you might remember the name Jim Wilson as the director of Stacy's Nights.
As we've already brought up, that's right, yeah.
And you might remember another Stacy's Night connection, because that movie was written by Michael Blake, who is the Oscar award-winning screenplay writer for this movie. Pretty wild to me that these guys made Stacy's Nights, which, if you want to check our power rankings, it sits damn near the bottom.
Sitting in the basement there, sitting right near the basement.
That movie's a woofer.
Yeah.
One, that they then made this, and that Michael Blake made this, and that Kevin Costner stuck with those guys and kept a friendship with them after he became this megastar. And
yes. Because he was hurdles above them in terms of career status and clout at this point.
Yeah, so he's told this story. I've seen it on probably 5 different interviews. He's told this story that Michael Blake he had kept friends with, and Michael Blake was beginning to kind of become a little bitter and jaded that Kevin was getting all the success, but also kind of kept on asking Kevin to help him out and get him meetings with Hollywood people. Well,
I was hoping I was going to surprise you with this story. I learned this and I was like, oh, I can't wait to hit you. This is a great story.
And so Michael Blake keeps on being like, come on, help me out. And Kevin would help him with connections.
And stayed at his house for let him live with him and his family for a couple months. A struggling writer.
But Michael, as happened to a lot of people who keep getting rejected, they sometimes have a defense mechanism to say, all these Hollywood people are fucking idiots. They don't know what's good. And let me tell you, if what you were sending was more Stacy's Nights, I know.
Not a great leg to stand on with Stacy's Nights.
Yeah, if your one movie that's been made is Stacy's Nights, maybe these Hollywood bigwigs got a bit of a point. But Kevin, as a guy who is becoming this this kind of made man in Hollywood, was getting annoyed that his buddy kept on going to these meetings, making a fool of himself, insulting people, and insulting friends that Kevin was making.
And these are probably
connections.
Exactly. Like Kevin's probably hooking them up in these meetings, and then they're coming back and like, why are you allowing this douchebag into our, he said this and he said this, and that's really reflecting poorly on Costner. And I would feel very upset if I was Kevin Costner too.
So eventually, Kevin they got in a physical altercation and said, like, don't be a dick. And Michael Blake kind of looks like he went away with his tail between his legs, and he started writing this Dance with Wolves and kept on asking.
Well, don't
Kevin,
forget, this is a man who can summon ghosts out of cornfields. So you don't mess. You don't mess with the costs, okay? Yeah. This is a man who murdered multiple cartel members.
Yeah, he crawled his way through the Mexican desert.
Yeah, you don't mess with this guy.
He took down Al Capone. This is the guy who took down Al Capone.
He took down Al Capone. Hello.
Yeah. So he kind of goes away, and Michael Blake starts kind of sending him pages, being like, "Are you going to read it? Will you read it?" And Costner's like, "No. You keep on writing screenplays. They're not successful. You keep on looking for the approval of only Hollywood people who you think are idiots. If you want to write something, go write a book. It can be whatever you want it to be." Yeah. And then he sometimes stayed at Costner's house. He slept on couches. He eventually came up with this novel that he's like, "Hey, will you read it? Will you read it?"
I think it was either a treatment at first, because what I read is what happened is he wrote it, and then Costner and I think Wilson, he wrote it. He was going to write it as a full screenplay first, and Costner and Wilson said, "No, make this a novel, and then we'll make that novel into a screenplay. Like, start with, give it the breath." And you can kind of tell as you watch this movie that like that is certain that was the right call, because of just how much depth there is in sort of the world building and the characters and stuff. So
and they had trouble getting it made once it was a screenplay, even with it's in Lakota, it's 3 hours long, it's a Western that nobody was making Westerns at this time.
Nobody's doing Westerns anymore. Yeah.
So all that to say, he writes this book and finally shows it to Costner, and Costner's like, "Well, goddamn, I'm going to buy these movie rights right away." And good for Michael Blake for keeping at it and having, I guess, sometimes you got to have that. You got to respect yourself to follow what you want to make, not what other people want you to make. And
sometimes you also need Kevin Costner to slam you up against a wall and tell you to stop being such a hoser.
Yeah, and then put down about like $15 million of his own money on it.
Yeah, also have our helps a little bit.
Yeah, that helps. I think that's incredible that these three guys started on nothing indie movies that are barely watchable, and then made this. And Michael Blake and Jim Wilson, not a lot more IMDb credits on their page after this movie.
Well, without getting too far ahead, like Michael Blake wanted this to become a trilogy, and
he wrote another book.
There is a sequel, and then unfortunately he had a third planned. The sequel is called The Holy Road, and had a third part planned, but he passed away in 2015, and so he never finished that third one. But
and there's been talks of The Holy Road being developed into either a film or a miniseries for a long time.
Yeah, and they had. And Kevin Costner has always said he will never do sequels.
Except for those fucking Superman movies.
Except for a little bit in DC, but that was just in like the extra cut. But so Viggo Mortensen was at one point attached, I think in the late 90s, to play John Dunbar in the sequel, but of course it did not materialize.
Nothing yet.
He went and did Hidalgo instead. He said, "I'm going to go to Middle Earth, and I'm going to ride some horses."
Other key players, we got Dean Semler, who's a cinematographer. He did Road Warrior, Cocktail, Waterworld, Super Mario Bros, Dragonfly, Paul Blart Mall Cop, The Ridiculous Six. He's got a weird IMDb. It's like just a lot of not great movies, and then a lot of great movies. So that's Dean Semler.
I wish his credits were, in a way, I wish they were only Dances with Wolves and Paul Blart Mall Cop. I think that would just be a good 1-2 punch of your career.
Yeah, just taking a nice 15-year break and only coming back to shaking off the dust for Paul Blart Mall Cop. We've got a John Barry score, which is incredible. John Barry, of course, is famous for the James Bond movies. Almost all of them he composed. He also did Body Heat and Out of Africa in the 80s. So pretty good career. And then one other person I want to give a shout out to is Doris Leader Charge. She was the language consultant and was the person who taught them all to speak Lakota. And she has a little cameo as she plays Two Bear's wife in the movie.
Oh, right. I had not caught that. So
the movie was filmed between July 89 to November 89, and it was released on October 19th, 1990. Had a budget of $22 million. Opening weekend, a little skim on the opening weekend. $598,000 for the opening weekend.
Yeah.
But the movie has a worldwide gross of $424 million. It is the highest grossing Western of all time. It was in theaters until June 30th, 1991.
That's a crazy long run.
Crazy long run.
Like, I mean, nowadays, you have your big Avengers and stuff with which your huge box office like Titans, they'll get, and now, especially now in 2021, and I even think 6 or 7 months is going to be, we're almost never going to see that anymore. But wow.
Yeah.
That's a crazy long run.
It is the third highest grossing movie for Costner behind the Superman movies. And it is number 2 on adjusted box office behind only Batman versus Superman. So if we're really talking...
Yeah, I didn't want to count that. Like, real.
Yeah, I know. But if we're talking just real Costner movies, this is by far the biggest moneymaker, which actually blows my mind because he's got some other massive movies coming up.
Yeah.
But this one, audiences friggin' loved it. It had a big award season. Have you heard?
I've heard about this Oscar ceremony.
So so it won 7 Oscars. Won Best Picture, Jim Wilson and Kevin Costner. Best Director, Kevin Costner. Best Adapted Screenplay, Michael Blake. Best Photography, David Semler. Best Editing, Best Sound, and Best Score. It is widely considered one of the most egregious you got it wrong Oscars. Now, I have a complicated relationship with that. Because I don't think it's a movie that doesn't deserve to be... Isn't Best Picture caliber. It is certainly a Best Picture caliber movie. The only problem is it's not Goodfellas.
Yeah, so Goodfellas is nominated. It was a good year all around in the nominations.
Yeah,
with the possible exception of Godfather Part 3, which was gifted a Best Picture Oscar, even though I do not think it merited that. But it's not Shakespeare in Love beating Saving Private Ryan and The Thin Red Line. No. But it is, with Goodfellas there's a lot of people who feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, it's also not like Driving Miss Daisy when, like, that movie. Nobody gives a shit about that movie. Even, like, nobody. But yeah, Goodfellas, maybe one of the most important movies in American cinema.
Yeah.
There were some other guys who were nominated. All of Costner, Graham Greene, and Mary McDonnell were nominated but lost. The only one that I think deserves, maybe if you're doing an Oscar season redo, I think there's an argument for Mary McDonnell over Whoopi Goldberg. I think there's a strong
argument. It was Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost?
Yeah. It was
and Ghost was nominated for Best Picture too, which I like Ghost.
Yeah, Ghost is good.
That's a fun movie, but man, standing up right there, right? Goodfellas.
It was Whoopi, Diane Ladd for Wild at Heart, Annette Bening for Grifters, and Lorraine Bracco for Goodfellas. But I think I think Mary McDonnell might be up there. Of course, Graham Greene lost to Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. There's no touching that. Kevin lost to Jeremy Irons in Reversal of Fortunes, which I've never seen.
Yeah, I don't even know that movie, actually.
It's I don't think it's probably aged very well because it's about Alan Dershowitz being like a hero lawyer. And I don't know if you guys know too much about Alan Dershowitz these days, but not to get too deep into the Epstein conspiracy theories, but Dershowitz was all over that.
Yeah.
All over it.
Yeah, so it looks even worse now.
So, Dances with Wolves, a movie that some have said, doesn't age the best, probably ages better than Reversal of Fortune.
I would think so. Yeah.
I'd bet the bottom dollar on that. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, and so maybe that's just something that we should say up front as well, is just to, especially with this film, as to settler folks here that are talking about this, it's important to acknowledge there are mixed feelings from different segments of indigenous populations all over North America about this film. Some who are sharply critical of it. The label of being a white savior film, I think, is absolutely fair. And at the same time, there are, including the Lakota Sioux, who felt very positively about this film as well. And so the world definitely doesn't need two more settler, white dudes centering our own opinions. So we're going to, as much as we can, try and examine this as a piece of film, knowing that there's no way to completely remove ourselves from the issues with Indigenous representation in it. But it is important to acknowledge, Indigenous folks are not a monolith. And so there isn't just one opinion, but there are some important critiques.
There's some important critiques, and then there's also, again, this is not to inject too much opinion, but there's the saying of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think this movie certainly had some things it did that were very definite positives while not being perfect.
Yeah, and certainly like positives that, again, the Lakota Sioux tribe would identify a lot of things that they felt it helped advance representation in many ways. And at the same time, you can say it can still occupy that space as a white savior film that's being told through a white lens. That's about a white guy at the end of the day. And so absolutely, you don't look at that as something that's beyond reproach. It's a complicated matter. And so we'll get into it a little bit as we go through the plot of the movie, but we're going to do our best to look at it as a film.
Yeah, we're certainly not here to try to solve it or justify it or even speak with any kind of expertise in this.
No, exactly.
Situation, because we don't have it. But it's a Kevin Costner podcast, and we got to do his biggest movie.
You can't not do it. Yeah.
All right. The beginning of the movie, Dances with Wolves. We've got the Civil War. We're landed right into the Civil War. We got John Dunbar played by Kevin Costner. He's got gangrene on his leg. The doctors say they're gonna have to amputate it, but then they get taken off. There's a battle going on. Dunbar grins and bears it, puts his boot on while chomping down on a stick to fight the pain. He goes to the front and he just notices we got that side over there. The Confederates, they're staring us down. They're going to kill us. We're kind of at a stalemate. We're just stuck here, stranded, and kind of looking at this kind of scene of senseless violence that there's no purpose to any of it.
Yeah.
Dunbar hops on a horse and just basically does a suicide run just to break the stalemate, just to kind of put him
into no man's land, like right
on
where
his
they're
horse,
all aimed.
And miraculously is spared from the gunshots from the Confederates, and this inspires the Union soldiers to join the charge. It's kind of a silly act of self-sabotage that is misread as bravery. He becomes like a decorated soldier, becomes, a bit of a hero and is able to, from here on, name what post he wants to go to. He's kind of relieved of duty for his heroics and given any outpost he'd like.
Yeah, because as he's doing this, a few generals are like, watch him. And actually, at first, they correctly interpret it and go, it looks like a suicide. But as he's going, it provides enough of a distraction that the rest of the northern soldiers advance and take the field. And when the general comes to him, he's kind of fallen off his horse at this point. He says, I just don't take my foot. And the general says, like, you won't lose your foot. He's going to get his personal ambulance and surgeon there. And he becomes a hero. And I will say that opening moment of him putting on the boot over his, like, just totally
Infected, gross
gangrene,
leg.
infected foot. One of the most visceral scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not a super squeamish person, but man, it's so good. Like you watch and just the pain. And again, it's the performance, like right from the start of him putting that stick in his mouth and just yanking on this boot. Oh, I still like, ugh. It's great.
Yeah.
Visceral.
Yeah. So, as I said before, he's able to get an appointment anywhere he wants. And so he goes to Fort Hayes, which is kind of near the frontier. Not the very last outpost, but kind of the last major fort, it seems. And there he meets this shell-shocked major played by a very incredible Maury Chaykin. I think this might be, I don't know, this might be a top 5 scene of the movie for me. It's just so weird and so ominous.
Yeah, and so different than anything else, especially where this movie goes with its pacing and its tone.
I think it juxtaposes well because it really feels like, I don't know if you've ever read Heart of Darkness, but or like Apocalypse Now, but there's these pieces that are racist in their own right, that are about like a white guy going into the heart of darkness, meaning uncivilized territory, and they're usually, the trip begins with somebody kind of who's like lost it a little bit and has kind of a foreboding essence to them, and that's what this scene sets up.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Costner has met this general who's on the edge of the frontier, who's like, "Oh, you're an Indian killer, I guess." And he's like, "Why would you say that?" He's like, "Well, you're in Indian country. That's what you're here to do, right? You want to be on the frontier." He when he opens the drawer, he's got like bottles clinking. He sends them off to the very furthest Fort Sedgwick. He said he keeps on calling him Sir Knight, and
on a knight's errand.
I am sending you on a knight's errand. You will report to Captain Cargill at the furthermost outpost of the realm, Fort Sedgwick. My personal seal will assure your safety through many miles of wild and hostile country.
You can tell he's just scribbling gibberish, and then he folds
like
up.
Don Quixote kind of like moment that he's interpreting over John Dunbar.
Yeah, and he's folding up this letter into like the smallest form it can be.
I love the way he just crumples it up. Like,
and he's like, "I've sealed it. My seal will grant you passage through these barren lands." It's great. So good. And then when Costner asks him, like, "Okay, how will I get there?" He's like, "You think I don't know?
You think I don't know? No, sir.
Think I don't know?
Just that I don't know. You think I don't know?"
It's so good.
I don't know.
And then when he's going away, he says, "Sir Knight," and he stands up.
Sir Knight, I just pissed in my pants, and nobody can do anything about it.
It's so so unsettling.
It's
again,
so great.
Just like we've said, supporting actors. When you've got a part like this, it has to get nailed in the first, from the first beat. And this guy does it from the get go. And I gotta commend him. It's one scene in the movie, and then he kills himself.
Yeah,
which again is just like, what?
Yeah, because as Dunbar is walking away, he's knocking on the window and it's like making a toast to your journey, and then he goes to my journey, and then you're like, and Dunbar's just like, oh, okay, like this is a superior officer, so there's nothing he can say, but he's clearly like, this guy's off his rocker, and then turns and he fires a pistol to his head, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think it's so great because it sets us up to think, okay, this is like, he's going into like the belly of the beast. He's going to, he's going to find some trouble, and it sets up the kind of the European or settler colonial perspective of what that place is and why Dunbar is different. Yeah. And I just think that's very cool.
I agree. Yeah, that it sets up, just the idea being, we think, oh, well, he's just on the edge, of this quote unquote heart of darkness. And even just being on the periphery here, we're seeing people, lose their minds and not be able to take it. And so, that the idea that he's going into this dark underbelly of who knows what, as a setup, which will be flipped on its head almost as soon as he gets out there.
Dunbar also has the line too, which is pretty important, of like, I want to go see the frontier before it's gone, which is also very important thematically that this is the time stops for no man, and it's going to keep going. And one day there won't be frontier anymore. That does not bode well for the Sue who he's about to meet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important for us as the audience to know that he has no delusions about that. So when he starts to form his relationship later, we know that right from the start, he knows what's happening with this manifest destiny and colonization and the way it's spreading across the West. He is fully aware of what's happening. Yeah.
And then we meet another great little character named Timmins,
and Timmins is where you have Maury. I might have Pastorelli here, Robert Pastorelli, as Timmins. A great performance, great character.
Yeah, he is the kind of grotesque chuck wagon driver who's charged with kind of delivering goods to Fort Sedgwick, this new fort Kevin's off to, and so he rides with them, and he's just a very uncouth gentleman. They see a skeleton and that's got an arrow through it, and he's got the great line of like,
somebody back east is saying, "Why don't he write?" You stupid bastard.
Somebody back home is saying, "Now why won't he write?"
As he's always why won't he write? Why won't he write? And he's always got like, he's dirty and he's got like always got food in his mouth that he's spitting out, and he's just always just like having these big laughs, and we're just watching Dunbar kind of tolerate him.
So they eventually arrive to Fort Sedgwick, and we see that it's been completely abandoned. It's run down. It by no means looks like, it doesn't look like the white man's trip out there is going to be as easy as, everyone's making it out to be. And this, again, goes kind of in line with that same kind of Heart of Darkness. Oh, okay, what happened here? There's a mystery. Yeah. This entire fort is just abandoned. There isn't anyone here.
No sign of life.
There's man-made caves to be like, oh, were the men living in caves?
Yeah.
Why weren't they living in the fort? That the water supply has been contaminated with like...
There's a dead stag in it,
Yeah. Costner or Dunbar is like, this is my post, I'm going to stay, this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to wait until, the company comes back, because somebody's going to come back, and I've got to hold down the fort. To which Timmins is like, "Are you crazy? I'm just going back. Like, you don't have to stay out here.
There's no one here." Like, and Timmins wants him to come back, and in fact, he has to like basically pull out his pistol to say like, "You're going to unload this wagon. This is my post." And a great scene where we see Dunbar isn't like he's certainly not a pushover. And he is committed to this. And it's interesting. Like at this point, we know a little about him, but we don't. Other than the fact that he says, he wants to see the frontier, it leaves us a little bit of mystery about the character of like, why is he so dedicated to this? Which I think is a thing this movie does well, there are scenes that are anything but overwritten, and it leaves us with a lot of, it lets us, fill in a lot of blanks and do a lot of interpreting motives and things without being confusing.
Yeah, totally. As Dunbar is kind of clean, he decides he's going to clean up the camp. He's going to make it nice. He's going to act like a soldier and get right to making the fort look respectable. Part of that is clearing out this water supply with all the carcasses. And as he's burning the carcass of this moose, was it a moose?
I think it was an elk or
elk.
A deer. I think it might have been an elk. Yeah.
Okay, sure. We'll go with elk. As soon as he lights on fire, he's like, "Oh yeah, smoke!" And then the movie does a good redirect. Mm-hmm. Huge fire, and we see a tribe of natives that we learn later are the Pawnee. This is where we see Wes Studi, and they're like, only a white man would be so dumb as to light a fire like that. Let's go get them. And then we think they're going to go after Dunbar, but then we cut to poor old Timmins lighting a fire on his camp. And the Pawnee come, and somebody's going to be wondering, why won't he write,
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the callback that they make as well, is the way that we see his corpse after they leave is lying in the exact fashion of the skeleton. He's lying face up in the grass with an arrow in him.
So these two great little characters we got right off the top.
Yeah, just boom, boom, they're gone.
Dead now, dead
rip
forever.
and dip, yep. But great performances by Maury and Robert Pastorelli, and just a great way to set up, especially in a as part of this first act. Not in a way that feels it has dissonance, but it just feels very distinct from where we're going, particularly in most of the second and third act.
For sure.
I think it's just a great setup to the movie, to the world, and to the characters and kind of culture that we're about to leave behind. So it's going to give us a good contrast to who we're about to meet and the community.
This quote unquote, sophisticated or
that's right,
culture, that these guys are
the Europeans who are
these are the
civilized people. Exactly.
Yeah. And then shortly into his stay too, about a month in, as he's cleaning up, he also is joined by a little wolf, and he names him Two Socks. That wolf might be thematic later. We'll find out more about this wolf.
We don't know.
Can you guess, audience?
And that wolf, who is played by two wolves in the movie.
Two Socks was two wolves.
This is the case, and the wolves were named Teddy and Buck, so just a little factoid for you there. We got a pair of wolves.
They're the Mary Kate and Ashley.
I was just gonna make that reference too. Because we're stupid. Oh man!
All right, Adam, take us into Act 2.
Dunbar has been at the base at the fort for a bit. And one day he's taking a bath, swimming around, singing a song that I really want to know the rest of the song. Something about can't get married because I don't have a hat. It's just like very like settler like era like frontier song about not being able to get a dame because you don't have a hat. And he is visited by who we later come to know as Kicking Bird, Graham Greene's character. He doesn't know who this is yet. He just sees, to him, he sees an indigenous guy coming up trying to steal Cisco, his horse. And we should say Cisco is the horse that he rode in that very first scene, who he was sort of awarded by the general for his acts of heroism. Yeah. He got to take Cisco with him on this journey. So Kicking Bird is trying to steal his horse. Dunbar sees this, and he's buck naked because he's just been bathing, but at least has enough to, he grabs his gun and starts walking towards him and scares Kicking Bird off. So just kind of a great moment of meeting between these two characters, who their relationship becomes arguably sort of the linchpin of the whole movie. And
then we get the famous Costner butt shot.
We get and listen, people, they wanted it. They got it. They said, we had a little bit of butt in Revenge, but I want John Dunbar. I want Costner butt with the mustache on top.
Yeah. Did we ever see any butt in Bull Durham? Did we ever see any Costner butt?
I don't think we do see Costner butt in there, unless there's like a scene of them like in the locker room or something.
Yeah. Costner butt it's a trademark. It comes up.
Yeah. This is a legend. This is a legendary butt, and you're getting to see it here, right, in all its glory.
Yeah.
It cuts to the Lakota Sioux, who are meeting to discuss, what do they do about this new white man who is here. And this is a great scene where we get to meet sort of a number of characters who will become important roles for the whole film. And so we learn a little more about Kicking Bird, who is clearly someone who is thoughtful and diplomatic, because he says this is someone, when they're debating what to do, he says this is someone I think we can make peace with. We can draft treaties. We can learn more about the white men who are coming. We also meet Wind in His Hair, played by Rodney Grant, who's awesome. And he is even self-identifies as I'm somebody who doesn't think first like Kicking Bird. I want to run right in. And he says, this is, white men are weak. This one is no different. And he says, if this man has medicine that could help us, let's put some arrows in him. If he has medicine, he'll be fine, and if not, he won't be. Yeah. And we also meet 10 Bears here, and just see that he is very obviously the elder, is quiet and thoughtful.
He's kind of like, these are all great points. Let's think on them later. Let's not do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go away and keep thinking. So they don't really come to a conclusion, but we see the dichotomy between Kickingbird's approach and specifically Wind in His Hair. Yeah. While this is happening, some of the kids of the tribe are kind of listening in, and they go off to the fort to try and steal Cisco, the horse. But as they're doing it, Cisco gets away.
Yeah, Costner knocks himself out on the door as he's running out.
Yeah, it's great shot. Costner, the slapstick Costner, like, it never gets old for me.
No, it's true.
He knocks himself out as the kids kind of wake him up. So he's passed out. Cisco gets away. One of them, I think, smiles a lot, falls off his horse and breaks his arm or fractures his arm. Yeah, dislocates something. And so Cisco ends up back at the fort. Then the adults come. Wind in His Hair comes to steal Cisco and to intimidate Dunbar. But again, Cisco breaks through. So Cisco, talk about MVP performances here. Cisco.
Yeah, Cisco.
He will not be taken. Kickingbird smiles a lot, Wind in His Hair, and nobody can get him. So the big part of this scene is this is the meeting between Dunbar and Wind in His Hair, who is shouting, did you see who I am? In Lakota, of course, so Dunbar doesn't understand it, but is shouting. Do you see who I am? I am Wind in His Hair. Do you see that I am not afraid of you? And you can see Dunbar is just generally confused. He doesn't know what he's saying. But this is the first statement of two, as opposed to Dunbar being sort of the more hostile one with Kickingbird. This is Wind in His Hair being particularly hostile as the start of the relationship between the two men. And then, this is now, 3 times that he's had these encounters. And so he narrates for us as he's writing in his journal that he decides he's going to stop waiting around for contact, and he's going to make a move. He's going to go to the Sioux village. But on his way ends up meeting who we come to know as Stands with a Fist, Mary McDonald's character. And he comes up behind her, doesn't really know what's going on. And then as she is startled and sees that he's there and is scared, he notices that she has blood on her arms, on her wrists. We find out later she's mourning for her husband. And this is self-harm / perhaps a suicide attempt. But in frightening her so badly, and probably also due to blood loss, he tries to help her. He wants to take the knife out of her hand and grab her and stop her. And she passes out. So now he's got this woman who is unconscious. And so now instead of just kind of charging into the village with the flag and all the statement, it becomes, he just knows he needs to bring her back. So he brings her back to the village. And tries to, this is sort of really the first moment of him trying to communicate with them. He goes up and they see him coming, and a bunch of them run away, and then Wind in His Hair and some of the other men come out, and he's trying to communicate. She's hurt, I hear, and Wind in His Hair grabs her and pulls her back. And so this is our first kind of exchange on the Sioux's territory. And Dunbar goes home. And then the Sioux decide that they need to start going and trying to speak with Dunbar. And this is where we get our first scene of them really trying to learn each other's languages. And they want to know about buffalo. As we learn, they haven't been able to find the buffalo yet this year, I assume.
Yeah, and Dunbar's also very interested in the buffalo. That's part of the things he wants to see. He's heard about the buffalo, and he's asking them first. He kind of does the first thing, what can I talk to these guys about? And he acts out, he mimes, puts his coat in his back to make a hump, and puts his fingers up by his horns,
goes on
buffalo. And Graham Greene, Kickingbird, is like, Tatanka? You mean Tatanka?
Yeah.
Tatanka? Tatanka?
Tatanka.
Tonka.
Here.
Tonka.
Tatanka.
Tonka.
Tatanka.
Tonka. Buffalo.
Oh,
Buffalo.
Tatanka.
Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, kind of the first moment where they successfully communicate and interpret each other. And so then there's a couple more scenes with this. There's a really funny one where he's making coffee in like I don't drink coffee. What is that? Like a little French press or something? And there's a really funny, quirky Costner scene where they're sitting there waiting for him, and he's grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding.
Yeah.
Looks in and clearly gives this look of like, not done yet, and then back to grinding, and he's like, he gives the little eye roll of, oh, this just takes forever, doesn't it? And he gives them coffee first time. Just a good quirky Costner scene, which every movie needs.
Yeah, and I also like he gives them sugar, and when his hair puts a bit in his coffee, and then like keeps putting
just
a bunch,
slams down like a ton. Okay,
in Kicking Bird's coffee, and Dunbar's like, that's actually a lot. That's too much.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Not so much. Yeah, no, it's we see that there might be a friendship brewing between.
Yeah, we start to establish at least there's an if not amicable. There's a relationship of at least convenience there, and no longer just outright hostility.
Yeah, and then we've got a scene where Kicking Bird talks to Stands with a Fist, who we haven't mentioned, played by Mary McDonnell. She was we don't learn exactly how she's in the tribe yet, but she was taken in as a young girl whose family was killed on the plains. Taken in and adopted by the tribe, and Kicking Bird is kind of her adopted father. So she's been there, living with them since she was, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And she's, a fully grown lady at this point. And Kicking Bird Stands with the Fist, you have to help translate. We can't talk with him enough.
Yeah. You have to remember.
And she's
language.
very resistant. She's like, I haven't done it. I can't do it. This is, I think, if you're playing the Oscar clip of what scene they include in the nomination, this would be it for Mary McDonnell. She's so great, like trying to remember and translate and make the right sounds of these English words.
Oh, here. Tayanya here.
Hello. You here? Good.
Thank you. I feel good.
First, they ask about if more whites are coming, but then it's like, or what are you doing at the fort? But Dunbar's like, no, who are we? Like, what are each other's names first? And so we just get a scene of them introducing themselves.
What is your names?
Their names?
What is his name?
He kick.
Kick?
More.
More kick? More kicking?
Kicking.
More kick?
Kicking. Bird. Kicking bird.
Kicking bird.
There's a great moment where Kicking Bird is kind of he's kind of pushing her like faster and faster, and it's a great scene just where she snaps back at him. Like, So that we don't know. This isn't a subtitle part, but says something like "Give me a minute" or just like quiet.
Shut up! I'm thinking here.
So it's a great little moment of character development too, where we're seeing she's not just this vessel or this sort of like agent of what the men want to do. Like we're seeing who she is as a person and her strength, and also sort of the relationship too of Kicking Bird, where she snaps back at her like father, and he kind of is like, oh yeah, sorry, like he internalizes it as okay, yeah, sorry,
yeah. Then old Dunbar's back at his fort. And he's awoken in the middle of the night by a stampede of buffalo. And he rushes over to tell the Sioux. They're in the middle of like, a ritual, a dance. And like at first everyone's like pissed that he interrupts. They're like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
They immediately turned on him like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He's like, Buffalo.
yeah, he comes up and obviously interrupts like, you know, a very sacred ceremony. And so they rush him on the horse, pull him down. And I never noticed this like the first time I watched it, but like they're like beating him when he's down there. Like he comes up with a bloody nose and stuff, like not super vicious, but Kicking Bird ends up pushing through and kind of stopping it. And then being able to communicate. Yeah. He's just like, Buffalo, I see Buffalo. And then there's this great moment where it just all stops, and then they all celebrate and cheer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the indication is that this ritual, this ceremony that they're doing, was connected to that. But I think the implication is there because that's clearly a key focus of them. They haven't been able to find their food source yet. And
then so they like immediately the Sioux start out kind of the whole tribe go out to form this hunting party.
Yeah. I also just want to say when he wakes up to the buffalo, just a really beautifully shot scene. It's at night. It's sort of foggy out there, and so there's this. We don't even really you don't even see the buffalo clearly because it's so dark. They don't light them in any way, but you know from the stampede sound, and they're sort of just. It's even him. They're just like around him, and so it's this dreamlike sequence. Like as he wakes up, there's something with like a touch of just like reverence and almost like supernatural about it.
It's almost ghost-like, you know. It's almost like seeing like a herd of ghost buffalo. Like, you know, that would evoke now because they go. You know, the buffalo are no longer prevalent, and you know, it's like it's pretty incredible. It's not bad filmmaking by that old Kevin Costner.
Yeah, you know, this guy's got a future.
Hey, just wait for the Postman.
I am.
His directorial follow-up.
I am.
And then so we see that, you know, they start tracking these buffalo, and then there's the heartbreaking scene where they come over a crest and they just see like the field littered with carcasses of dead buffalo that have just been, you know, skinned for their hide,
clearly
their tongues cut out
by white hunters.
Yeah, and then you know, he says, you know, we could tell by the wagon tracks that who would do this. People with just no regard for other people's way of life, no regard for life at all, really. Yeah, and so, you know, all the Sioux kind of mourn, but it doesn't stop them continuing to track the buffalo. And then the next day we have, I mean, just the piece de resistance of the movie. One of the most
incredible sequences, I think, especially at this time, that I think would have existed on film as a set piece, as an action sequence, essentially. Yeah. And I got some behind the scenes about this. So why don't you lay it out for us?
First the buffalo hunt begins. We see just a massive herd stampede of buffalo, and all of these indigenous actors and Costner as well, you know, riding a bareback, no hands, like bow and arrows, spears, just beautiful shots, far away shots, close-ups, moving camera. It just puts you right into the hunt. It is so impressive. The editing on it is so spectacular.
Absolutely. Everything from every department fires on all cylinders.
This is what, you know, you can't fault the Academy for looking at this and looking at this directorial debut and being like, this is
an achievement of filmmaking.
This is huge. It is breathtaking. The sequence kind of ends with Smiles a lot getting bucked off his horse, and one of the buffalo bison kind of picking him apart and about to charge him. And Dunbar at this point sees this and takes out his rifle, and
a great tense sequence where he's trying to take him down, misses a couple times, and just the shot of he takes the buffalo down and it crashes. This huge beast crashes just right up to Smiles a Lot's feet. Also, that scene or that moment begins with Smiles a Lot gets knocked off his horse, and then the buffalo by that buffalo, and then it kind of stops and turns around, and the way the shot is composed, and the buffalo just looks towards the camera, it reminds me so much of the Simpsons episode where Lisa becomes a vegetarian, and there's the Troy McClure talking about, if a cow ever got the chance, it would eat you and everyone you care about. And this cow just looks towards the camera, and I can only think of that now. If a buffalo would eat you and everyone you care about.
That's incredible.
And yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if I think it's hard unless you've worked in film just to appreciate just how incredible and difficult this whole sequence would be. I mean, this is a sequence that, especially nowadays, this is a sequence that involves no CG, to my knowledge, and if it is, maybe a little bit of accenting.
Yeah,
this is not computer generated buffalo or shots. This is all trained stunt work and some
animatronics.
And exactly, animatronics, so practical effects. $250,000 to do this sequence. So there were 3,500 buffalo that they used for the stampede that they got from a local ranch.
Two of them belonged to Neil Young.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, two of them were pets that belonged to Neil Young.
The one that he shoots that they need to get to.
Yes, and that one, the one that is charging at Smiles a lot. I read the behind the scenes. In reality, was charging at its favorite snack, which was Oreo cookies. I just think it's
that's
like
how
that's the best.
Become?
Yeah. So next time you watch that scene as it's charging, it's just wanting them Oreo cookies.
And he really just drops dead because he hits the Oreos.
That's right. Yeah, he goes too deep. So 3,500 buffalo and 23 fake buffalo, including the use of mechanical ones. And so the way that they did this sequence, because I honestly, like, in watching this and preparing, I went back and I was like, did animal rights groups sign off on this? I'm like, how did they do it? Especially these sequences where you see in these wide shots, these buffalo go down. I'm like, how did they do that? And so what they did, they had the fake buffalo, the mechanical ones and the animatronic ones. They were run on tracks and then caused to crash and fall to give the impression of buffalo going down. Other fake buffalo, they would launch out the back of trucks and then record them falling on the ground for sort of the close-up shots. And then with some, they were able to just attach arrows with clips to the fur of actual buffalo. And it just comes together. And again, it would be easy in this sequence to hide a lot of things by just doing really quick cuts and really close-ups.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have any of the same kind of magnificence to the sequence.
Moving cameras that follow, that follow from the rider shooting the arrow over to the buffalo who's getting shot and falling. Like, it's really magnificent. Yeah. It's just so good.
Yeah, all the horse falls were done by trained falling horses. There's a part where a buffalo and a horse collide, and apparently it's a taxidermied buffalo head that's held by a man. So again, just the way they're composing these shots, it looks like you watch this, and again, this is a movie from we're talking about like the early 90s.
89 it was made,
89 that it was actually shot, and it totally holds up. Like, I don't think it looks dated or hackneyed at all. I think virtually all the shots look just still to this day incredible. So an amazing sequence.
I mean, I think it is a thing that lingers in the movie to this day. Like, that's as a piece. Like, a movie is good when you leave it and you can remember like 3 scenes. And that's actually very, very difficult. There's a lot of movies I leave and I go, I kind of forget immediately what happened. And this sequence, if you're watching it, and I can only imagine watching it in theaters in 1990, that blow your hat off.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's of course I think we were both probably too young to have ever seen this in theaters in the original run. But I agree, that would have been one that you'd walk away and everyone would be talking about this movie and probably this sequence among other things.
For sure. So they go back to the camp and kind of Dunbar is a bit of a hero for saving Smiles a lot, and everybody keeps asking him to tell the story.
This whole thing is one of my favorite. This is one of my MVP sequences of the movie in terms of characters.
Yeah, he can't speak the language yet, too. So he's just like miming, acting out, shooting.
Yeah, they want him
Buffalo
to tell
Fall.
the stories, but they've only learned minimal, like a few words each.
Yeah.
But you're also seeing that the shift from not only is he now not just this scary white outsider or this guy that they're kind of get along with, like he's becoming part of, the fabric of this. And we even see that on the way to the buffalo hunt there. They will go by and smile and call him Lieutenant. And so you're seeing sort of them develop an affection for him and him back to them.
Yeah, and we see, so far his kind of antagonist amongst the Sioux has been Wind in His Hair, and Wind in His Hair is kind of like, I like your jacket, or, motion of his jacket, like, you want to try it on? And he trades his jacket for, Wind in His Hair is kind of chess piece. And
so after this, he talks about how it's only been a few days, but he finds himself really missing the Sioux, and he says, today I'm going to make my first unannounced visit. So he's getting in the deep of the relationship. He's going for the pop-in, which, if you're dating someone, or if you're friends, or how you have one of those friends who you're like, I never really hung out with them one-on-one, but I really like this guy. Like, I'm going to try for the pop-in, like, see if, maybe he just wants to hang out. He's going for the pop-in. He's put himself out there, man.
That's a big move. Takes
a big move.
It's hard to make adult friends, It's very hard to make adult friends.
And that's really what this podcast is about. And so he goes, and this is like a beautiful and memorable scene where Two Socks, the wolf, follows him. And so he's on Cisco, he's on his horse, and he looks back, and Two Socks is following him. He says, go home. And then gets off his horse and kind of tries to chase him away, and realizes obviously like Two Socks. So he kind of starts playing a little bit with Two Socks. He chases them and then runs back, and Two Socks comes and clips at his heels and knocks him down. And meanwhile we see Kicking Bird. I'm not sure if Wind in His Hair is watching in this scene too, but a few of the men who I guess were just outranging. Maybe they were coming to see Dunbar. We don't know, but they're watching this like ridiculous visual happen of this man just running back and forth with this wolf. And also another behind the scenes thing. So apparently when they were filming this, some of the scenes are not some of the close-ups, like with the boots where he's getting clipped on his heels, is not Costner, but it's the trainer of these wolves. Right. And I guess again, even trained wolves for movie purposes, these are not dogs. They're not domesticated animals. They're wild animals. I guess the wolves, they had to keep throwing food because the wolves kept kind of nipping at the heels, like more than what they were supposed to do in the takes. And so it's just a funny thing that's happening behind the scenes here.
I guess Costner said in a couple interviews that told a story of like getting the wolves, and that they just like, the trainers were there on day one and were like, you do this and do this, and then like they wouldn't behave whatsoever when the trainers weren't there. Like, dude, you guys got to get in there. And then the trainer like got bit and was like, "You're back in." Okay.
That's right. Yeah, the trainer got bit. Yeah, exactly.
So the trainer got bit. He's like, "All right, I'm done. You do the rest." Yeah.
So they see this scene of Dunbar doing these ridiculous things with this wolf, and that when he gets there, he finds out that the Sioux are leaving and forming a war party to go and fight the Pawnee. And Dunbar initially he wants to go with them, and he's really kind of lobbying for this, saying, I know how to fight. I want to come. Saying at this point, like, I care. I'm one of you, but he's saying I care about you, and I want to help.
But this is also a good, juxtaposition of the Sioux versus, him being like, well, it's my duty. I'm a soldier. I'm supposed to fight. And they're like, this isn't your fight. Why would you go fight?
Yeah, exactly. And specifically saying, like, in terms of just understanding difference of culture, they're saying you're not a Sioux. Like, why? They haven't done anything to you, so why would you want to fight? So again, just seeing different ethics.
That contrast with the Civil War, which a lot, certainly wasn't senseless in purpose, but at the same time was a country murdering each other,
Yes,
so
exactly.
Certainly was not, though there was heroics in that war, certainly was also senseless loss of life.
Oh yeah, and just such a massive scale too. And so and again, and then just seeing the and again, it's not even necessarily the movie isn't necessarily even like critiquing ethics in war, but just showing you the difference. And this isn't something where you decide that you're behind a cause, then you go do it. For them, they would say, you not having this personal connection. It's what's clear in the scene, and the acting really picks this up too. Is that's just a confusing idea. Why would you do that? You're not part of this tribe, and they haven't done anything to you. So just highlighting the diversity in how they interpret these matters. Instead, what kind of resolves this scene and sort of makes Dunbar agree not to go is Kicking Bird stands with his fist, he asks Dunbar to watch over his family while he's gone, and he calls him Dances with Wolves, and he says who's Dances with Wolves, and then Mary McDonald says, well, you are. And then he remembers, like, oh, that day that you saw me. So this is where, so this is obviously, this is where I get the title of the movie, but more importantly, they said the name of the movie. Hey, that's the name of the movie. But more importantly, what we're seeing in this moment is they have given him a name, which I think this becomes a particularly, maybe even more than the tent or the moments or the trade or saving Smiles a lot. I think this is probably a moment for Dunbar where he starts to internalize a new identity with these people and with the life that he has started to cultivate here. And as this is happening, so they go off. So now we've got this opportunity where he gets to hang out with Stands with a Fist more, and they're teaching each other language, like clearly over sort of a montage where they're hanging out a lot. There's a romance brewing there, and they begin to fall in love. And
who can hate that?
And who can hate love?
You don't like love, get out.
Only the deep haters, yeah. If you don't like love, don't listen to this podcast. Because you know what? We love each other and we love you.
Pro love.
You're pro love here. So he, now wanting to obviously pursue this, he speaks with, I think, Stonecalf in this scene. Where he learns, he asks, Stonecalf says it's not really, we don't typically speak about these things, but you're an outsider. So again, really good subtle storytelling things here and there. They're just showing where we are, and where we're not quite yet. So just that really gradual movement. At this point, he has the name, he's watching over the family, but we're establishing in very effective ways through these scenes. He's not one of them, not at this point. But he says, okay, you're an outsider, so you don't know. So he says, we don't usually talk about the dead, but she's mourning for her husband. And that he asks, how long will she mourn for? And he says, well, it's Stonecalf says it's not up to her. It's up to Kicking Bird. It's up to her adopted father to decide when she will stop mourning. And then so a few more scenes of them and flirting, and clearly what they tell really well with like little kids chasing them and other women in the village sort of noting them is that the village is aware that this romance is brewing and seem to be positive about it. And then we get a little more butt here from Costner, I think, because we're gonna get as you said here, a classic Costner sex scene. So I should say at first the first time it seems like they make out. They're down by the creek.
Yeah, they don't go straight to it.
Sorry, I forgot that part. Okay, so before they get to the sex, they have a good old fashioned make out down by the river. That. My high school had that spot too, where you could sneak off and nobody's around. Actually, there was a river that backed onto my high school too, so it was probably down there. So they sneak on down by the river, and they have a nice little.
You say probably like you were never asked to go down by the river.
Yeah, I that is true. I never did it personally, but I'm sure other people did.
Just piecing it together now, like where could it have been? I want to know.
This podcast is about me trying to have high school people listen and hear, like, guys, I was never invited to this stuff. So they have a nice little river makeout.
And it's up on Twitter if you know where the makeout spot was in KW.
On the spot, it was on the Speed River in Preston, Cambridge, Ontario. So the chemistry between Costner and McDonald is outstanding. And I think this scene is really great too. They're walking away and they're kind of like fixing themselves up, and because they're out of sight of the village, obviously. And then he keeps pulling her back for more kisses. He's passionately in love. And then it moves to the scene in the tent where they're gonna have the sex. And
which I think like since The Untouchables, since he's really broken out, he has a sex scene in like almost every movie.
Yeah, well, we got
like not Untouchables, but No Way Out,
Revenge.
Bull Durham, Revenge, this.
Revenge has that, yeah.
So just Field of Dreams and just Untouchables, where he plays like white bread, nice American dad. It's either that or he's got to get steamy.
Or he's the romance. He's the ingenue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and again, I think we talked about in our Bull Durham episode, maybe, what's the most handsome Costner. And a lot of people would argue that John Dunbar, in his many, he has a lot of different looks during this movie. He goes from full like Civil War white settler to then eventually being long hair, clean shaven, and versus just having the handlebar mustache. I like the handlebar mustache personally.
Yeah, what I like about this movie, and it's happening at about this point of the movie. I like this starts a bit of a trend with Kevin Costner having the period piece mullet. He's doing a period piece, but his hair is exactly just like 80s mullet, and it's fucking great.
And it's a great mullet.
This and in Robin Hood, back to back, just like period piece mullets.
Oh, it's so true.
So good.
Robin Hood one, yeah,
so good.
Anyways, piece mullet. That's right.
Well, and Sands with a fist, like just has like big. It looks like she's in a Motley Crue video, like just big 80s hair.
That's true. Yeah, and. It's funny you say that because actually, I guess that does ring true as maybe a little more of like the fact that it was the 80s, because I did kind of interpret it as like a thing of it's nice when obviously you watch period pieces where people aren't doing their hair and wearing makeup and doing these things that are clearly not of the period. But yeah, I didn't actually really make that connection that it might actually be a little like 80s of how she's got the big like Bonnie Bedelia and Die Hard, like
exactly,
big voluminous hair. So so we've got some modern appeal here going on. Then we find out that the Pawnee are coming to attack the Sioux at their village there, and so it's his 10th scene because of course Wind in his hair, Kicking Bird, like all the younger men are off, like they were off to go and find the Pawnee on other ground. Dance of the Wolves tells 10 bears, and then those who are left, like I have guns at the fort. Rifles will make one warrior like two. It's worth it. Like so, he takes Smiles. He takes Smiles a lot, and they go to the fort and they find. And it's a great scene where it's tense. It's like. You're worried, like that they've got a time crunch. It's pouring rain, and they're trying to find the spot that's muddy enough through the horse's hooves to find where he buried all these rifles. So they find it. Great moment again. Just lots of great work. Like Smiles a lot, and his relationship. You're just seeing it continue to develop. This is the first thing where Smiles a lot starts as a character wanting to be known as a man and a hero, and so when Dunbar turns and says. When 10 Bear says you can take one person with you, like we can't spare anybody else, he turns and he says, I'll take Smiles a lot. And you just see this big smile come across his face.
Yeah.
This is what he wants. He wants to be taken seriously. He wants to be a warrior, a man. And then what I also think is that the arc that we'll see later is just it's a beautiful organic arc that his character takes. But in this moment, he gets to be part of, the heroes as he goes out, gets the guns. And then we have a great scene of the Pawnee attacking. Really good action sequence. The Pawnee move into the village, but the fact that he's gotten them the rifles really kind of turns the tide, because it puts even folks like 10 Bears who would have been, who wouldn't been able to stand up against these young warriors, is able to have the advantage. Yeah.
And this is where we get a little bit of the. Like this scene, and then him saving Smiles a lot from the buffalo. It gets a little white savior-y.
Yeah,
the white protector.
Absolutely.
Now, I think the movie also shows that as much as he's the white protector, he's also the undoing of the tribe. He is actually the forebearer of destruction.
Absolutely. And although I think it doesn't get explored hard enough, I do think, they bring attention. Like, he holds back this information. And he even says at the beginning, he's like, I'm not sure why, and whether it's his commitment to like his sense of duty or just generally like whiteness or not trusting. He says like he could have told them long ago. This whole movie takes place over the course of about just over half a year, maybe 8 months. Yeah. So it's not as though if he had told them right at the start that everything would have been different. But he does, like, he holds back information long enough that it makes it much more difficult for them when they're about to strike their summer camp and go to the winter. And there are critiques that there are moments in the scene that show, Dunbar sort of teaching them how to fight. I don't know that that's really how it comes across totally, but I do understand that many audience members, particularly white audience members, will walk away interpreting that and going, "Oh, good thing that the white soldier was there to help them." Yeah, and so I agree that although it might not be the intention, with these movies, you have to understand the responsibility that you take in telling these stories, and that there are, and I think no one would question Kevin Costner and probably Jim Wilson and Michael Blake's intentions. But, there's a lot of white saviorism is a thing that particularly not as many white conservatives, but white liberals fall into in a way of having racist tropes. And so I think it is something that that we see moving forward now, but is a fair critique of what's going on, especially.
For sure. I think it's at least good that in the setup of this, it's like Dunbar has to do this because the other warriors are away.
Yeah, exactly.
It isn't like him teaching
wind in his hair how to fight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And in fact, we see later a fight scene where he gets rescued, of course, by the Sioux. And I will say one thing on a more trivial note that I find to be terrible about the scene. There is a terrible take when Stands with a Fist shoots the Pawnee who comes into the tent. As good as the buffalo sequence is, there is a horrible take where this rifle blows this guy 8 feet back. As if it was like a 20th century shotgun at point blank. And it has a Wilhelm scream in it. Do you know what that
does
is?
it?
Yeah, it isn't.
Of course I do. Yeah,
it isn't the exact one that you always hear in Star Wars, but it is a bad stock footage scream that comes through. And so I would say, as magnificent as the buffalo sequence is, and I still think the sequence in general is a really well done action set piece. Go and watch that scene again, and it's okay. I believe it's a stinker.
Yeah. The one other thing I'll say about this scene, there's also criticism about we've got the Sioux who are like. Yes. The peaceful, noble people. And then we've got the Pawnee who are, as much as we see them, are basically just the ruthless, murderous hostiles. Yes. They are the natives of John Ford movies. They are the natives, of
they're the scary
the searchers and exactly. And though they're not developed very much, like there's not a lot of screen time with the Pawnee.
Yes.
I will say the end moment when you've got Wes Studi, kind of the lead Pawnee, who is just encircled by the rest of the Sioux. And, I think there is they do give a bit of grace of showing him just like as a noble warrior and like while surrounded just lets out his war cry. His war cry. I think that is great rather than just showing them just as.
I think that's a more positive part. But I think the other thing that the critique that comes in here in terms of just accuracy of depiction is the Lakota Sioux were actually a massive tribe. They were the predominant population, and the Pawnee were actually much smaller. And depending on different historical records, it was the Pawnee that were often preyed upon by the much larger and widespread Lakota Sioux. And so I think that what you get into here is with any interpretation, again, the risk is that we only have one representation of Pawnee here. And so I think in those couple moments, like you said, a moment of kind of grace at the end of sort of this nobility, that moment at the beginning. They're trying to give you as much as they can possibly of trying to say this is not a monolith thing. But you're going to be constrained by screen time, by the fact that that's not the story we're telling here. But it does go to show like why great care needs to be taken, and why at the end of the day, I do agree with the fact that we need less films that are through the lens and through the production and writing of white settlers that involve this. And we need to be able to have more space for Indigenous folks to tell their stories themselves.
Shit, yeah. I can back that.
Also, when they shoot him off his horse at the very end, they must have been really careful to aim those rifles up, because they are a circle of people who are all facing inward and all fire. Now he is up on the horse, so I'm not saying it comes off terribly, but it's just one of those things where they all fire facing each other in a circle.
They best not miss, you know?
You better not miss, and you better point that barrel up.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So after this, we see it's not Dunbar. Someone else meets Kicking Bird and Wind in His Hair and sort of the war party that was out. And you can see there's this exchange where you can see them surprised and then go towards the village. Clearly they just found out, hey, well, you were gone. This happened. They attacked. They get back and then we just see some of my favorite, again, scenes in the movie are just the scenes that take place at night, in the different tents. They're just these short glimpses into these people and their lives and relationships. Mm-hmm. This is where we get that scene of Ten Bear's wife just telling a story, clearly from like early when they were, maybe before they were married. And it sounds like it's a story about a buffalo chasing them both up a tree. And just these beautiful moments where we're learning what makes these cultures incredibly diverse, but we're also seeing through Dunbar just the kind of the universal humanizing, like the stories of an old couple and stories of when they were young, when they were dating. From there, there's a great just little moment between Black Shawl and Kicking Bird where she has to point out to him that there's this romance brewing, and he's like, withstands with a fist, and he's like, what are you talking about? With who? She's like, who do you think? And he's like, tell me. And she's like, Dances with Wolves. And he's kind of like, he's not upset by it. He's just like, it's a great like dad moment of like, I don't know what's going on in my daughter's life right now. Like, what? She is? And she shares that he asks like, what does everyone think about this? And she says, everybody thinks it's a good match. And so then the next day he goes, he just walks right up to her, and you can tell he's kind of looking around, and she's walking with another character who I don't think we get a name for, and just says, you're no longer mourning, and walks away. So basically just, she gets the approval that she needs. And then we go into the wedding scene. And I think the wedding scene is great, particularly the end where the ceremony happens, and then at the end, Kicking Bird just sort of declares, without grandeur, just she's your wife now. Yeah. And Dunbar just kind of, it's like he's waiting for a bigger moment or an applause or something. Oh, good. Yeah, that's good.
And he was able to get married without a hat or without boots or whatever that song is.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So I think there's a good arc with that song. Yeah. In this story, but it just tells a great story about it. What a departure from any wedding that he would have ever experienced.
Yeah, and there's also a really I thought it was a really great scene from Rodney Grant as Wind in His Hair, when he like talks to him like, I was really mad when her husband died, and now I see he left so that you can come, and I see that now.
Yeah. Another just great, more character development from Wind in His Hair. Like here he is expressing as someone who kind of had one vision of how you go about things. Like now he's changing his mind about things, and he's seeing different perspectives as someone who's a self-professed guy who isn't a thinker. We're seeing the self-critique he had that he says, Kicking Bird's a thinker, I'm not. We're seeing him grow in that and actually become someone who's evolved.
Yeah. It wasn't all sunshines and rainbows.
No.
Because you know what?
This is not it would be great if this was the end of the movie.
It would probably be a pretty lackluster movie if you think about it.
Yeah.
if you use your brain to think about story structure and stuff, like maybe it wouldn't be a good ending. But so now Dance is, as we've said, like earlier when he was John Dunbar, he talked like, I don't have the heart to tell them that like there's more of me coming. And now he's a member of the tribe, and he's like,
he is part of this community.
I have to tell them. So there's a really good scene with him and Kicking Bird when they're trying to express, and Kicking Bird still is kind of optimistic that like, well, we convinced one white man, maybe he can, talk to the other guys and, broke treaties with us. Dunbar knows that ain't the case. That ain't going to be how it goes.
Yeah.
Kicking Bird asks how many are coming.
How many?
Like the stars. We chumpy.
As many as there are stars in the sky. And so then, they go to 10 Bears and kind of tell him this is what's happening. He's like, well, we're gonna close up this village anyways, and we're gonna go to the winter camp, and he's got the scene where he shows the conquistador helmet and goes, the white men came for my great grandfather and they left this, and then they came for my grandfather, and then they came for my father, and they just keep coming, and every time we fought them off, they just keep coming. I don't think this is going to stop.
And there's something beautiful in just how he frames it. It's not a resigned surrender. It's not defeatist. It's not even nihilistic. It's just there's this acceptance of it, and him recognizing, that it's him accepting like things are changing, and we will like have to receive these things as they come. But he has no delusions. Like, this is happening.
Yeah. And so as they're striking the camp, Dunbar realizes, oh yeah, I wrote all this stuff down in my journal. He's been keeping a journal the whole time. That's back at the fort. John. Like, bring the journal with you. Like,
it's the only thing you brought.
You don't want a journal about your wedding? Like, why isn't that on you?
Also, you're still narrating to us, John. Yeah. So where's this narration coming from? Because it's supposed to be from the pages of your journal.
And he keeps narrating after the journal is... But I guess he gets the journal back. Maybe it does work. Maybe it does. Maybe this movie works.
This is the real flaw in the whole movie. Is that he's still narrating to us, but I don't see pages in the journal.
But yeah, so he's got I got to go back to Fort Sedgwick. I got to get the journal because that journal is going to lead them right to us. Even though again they're moving the camp. So
yeah, well, no, I think that still holds up. Like the idea that it gives enough clues about what they need to look for and who these people are.
Fair enough. I'll edit this part out because I sound stupid in it. But yeah, so he, as Dances goes back, he's white man dressed in his kind of Sioux regalia still. And lo and behold, then there's a new army outpost at Fort Sedgwick, and they immediately go Indian, and shoot him off his horse, capture him, and shoot Cisco.
Oh,
just kill that horse. That horse that couldn't be killed by those Confederate soldiers.
Yeah, that's right.
That horse that couldn't be taken by the Sioux. Just shot and then picked by birds.
Yeah, and that it's an incredibly tragic scene in the staging and in Dunbar's performance. Also a great moment of, I think this is when the score for this final act, the soundtrack really kicks into gear, and it just adds so much weight. Like just the tragedy of the strings.
It's a really good score. Like, we haven't really mentioned it, but it's a really good score.
It's an all-timer.
Yeah. Then he's arrested, he's beaten. They're like, well, you're a native. And he's like, no. Like, you're here to kill hostiles. There's no hostiles. There's nothing for you to do here. Like, there's no people for you to conquer. There's no, like,
this is Dunbar
talking. Like, there's no enemies. Yeah. And they basically go, you have to show us if you want to be not branded as a traitor, if you want to work your way back into the good graces of the U.S. Army, you have to go show us where these guys are, which he's like, no way, buddy. All of the Union soldiers, like, there's some criticism that these guys are just, like Timmins, are just so crass and crude that all the white men other than Dunbar are just knuckle draggers. But you know what?
Yeah.
I don't mind that because Let's be real. They sure did just indiscriminately kill tons of people. And not in like, and also not buffoonishly. Like, it was a planned, coordinated, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're seeing just the unbridled white supremacy of like this institution and the people who are there to carry out its orders. And I think they do it. We do have Charles Rocket plays Lieutenant Elgin. You may know him as the bad guy from Dumb and Dumber, which is what I always think of when I see him. And I think they do a decent enough job showing he, at his heart, is clearly a decent man. And we can see later there's some regret, spoiler later, when he's killed. We see Dunbar has just a moment of not regret, but sympathy for him, because I think he sees...
There's a doubling there, right? I think there's a doubling going... If he came when I was here and he was alone, maybe he would be me. And if I came with him, maybe I would be him now.
Yeah.
You know? That reflection.
Yeah.
Very Joseph Campbellian of old Michael Blake.
Yeah.
And on top of that, how many Western movies, John Ford era, Anthony Mann, Howard Hawks, where the natives were portrayed just as, you know, simplistic, cruel savages. So... I don't mind this, even if it is kind of putting Cheese Whiz on the cheeseburger. Slop on that Cheese Whiz, I say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the one thing that is part of this film too, is it is working intentionally to, or it is trying to work intentionally to invert that trope that. Yeah, the early and mid 20th century had, where this is probably one of the first big Hollywood films where the Northern soldiers are not portrayed as just the moral heroes, and we're seeing them specifically. We set up at the beginning of the movie sort of just this even ground between the Northern soldiers and the Confederate soldiers as just all these people engaged in this disastrous conflict. And again, not to say that it is just equal across what the Confederates were fighting for in the North, but that again that the Northern soldiers were not these moral heroes, always like out to do the right thing, good people, because this is historically accurate. It was the Northern Army then who rolled through the West. Yeah,
exactly. And so these guys also, these soldiers also see Two Socks, and of course they have nothing better to do but just shoot at him, and he won't run away. And Two Socks is also killed. So these guys, they like to kill animals.
They're heels.
Yeah. They're sons of bees. So Dunbar's being Dances with Wolves is being transported, and his boy's winning his hair. There's a good. We see that there's been a rescue party out for them from the Sioux.
Yeah,
and they attack the wagon. They rescue Dunbar. Dunbar strangles Spivey.
Yes. Spivey. Yeah. Spivey. Sorry, not Spider. Yeah.
I watched the movie with subtitles on, so it helped to know all the names. Spivey just kind of chokes him out with his chain bracelets and drowns him in the water,
in the river.
We see another one of the guys like slinking away, just like totally terrified, and again also killed. It also just shows like this is the real violence too. It's not like these aren't just like kumbaya people. They are ready to protect theirs and fight for their friends and allies.
And again, in the showing that they get the jump on the soldiers. They know exactly like where to attack them, and they pretty much unscathed, like absolutely like decimate the supposedly quote unquote like more civilized, organized army. Right. And I think there's a great moment here too where after Bauer tries to slink away, he runs into Smiles a lot and is about to shoot him, but is out of bullets or his gun jams or whatever, and then gets turned around, and eventually Smiles a lot is actually the one to kill him. And it's a great completion to this arc that we've been talking about. He wants to be seen as a man.
He wants to be a hero.
But then when it actually happens, like when he actually has to kill a man, we can see like there's a part of him that's like, that's actually, he thought he wanted to be that. But in this moment, he just feels the pain of taking another person's life, and he sits down and puts his head between his legs. And so I just think a really well completed arc.
Yeah. Dances, we're rounding near the end of the movie now, and dances again. I like too that they give this space. You know, he dances, comes back, and is like, "Hey, I'm now an enemy of these people. They're not going to let me just like there's a face and a name. And they know exactly who I am, and I'm wanted. They're going to hunt for me, and if they hunt for me and find me, they're going to find you. So I can't be here." And then there's another scene with 10 Bears where he goes, let's smoke a little. Like it's good that just that space of like, let's not rush to anything, and let's not have our last moments together also be this anxiety filled thing. If you have to go, maybe you have to go, but let's sit and smoke. It's great. And then there's a nice scene with Costner. He's been kind of whittling this pipe for the last 40 minutes of the movie, and he runs into Kicking Bird and he's like, "You finished your pipe? How does it smoke?" He's like, "I haven't smoked it yet." And they exchange pipes. And then as they're riding off, as Stands with a Fist and Dances with the Wolves are riding off, we see Wind in his hair yelling at the top of the cliff.
I'm winning his hair. Do you see that I'm your friend? Do you see that I will always be your friend? So a reversal of his opening line where can you see that I'm not afraid of you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can you see that I will always be your friend? That it's like, it's really great. And then that's the end of the movie. It's a somber ending. And then there's also the postscript that says, 13 years later, the Lakota Sioux had been totally removed off the land. Not totally, but
had surrendered to,
the army had moved in, and how quick it is.
Yeah, because there's a tag where we see the army is led to the winter camp, and because Dance with the Wolves is worried that he's not going to move the winter camp, they're led to the winter camp, but then they find it empty. Yeah. So it's this I don't even know if bittersweet is the right word, because it's like okay, they're safe for now, but
they're on the run.
Of course, like their way of life, they're on the run, and their way of life is ending. If not, if they have a few more days, weeks, years, but we don't get to see specifically how it ends for them.
And it's also like that 13 years was a staggering, like, wow, that's so quick. Like to see how late the frontier actually has been settled. Like, this isn't that long ago, We're talking 1860s, 1870s, and, we act like, we've always kind of been here. It's like, no, we really haven't. And like certain places, certain cities are like, they're not old. And by, you think by, the 1950s, you're like, oh yeah, America is America. And like those places, those cities were, Deadwood, South Dakota was in 1950 was like 60 years old. Like that's nothing.
And again, and when you compare it to just how long the land has been stewarded by indigenous people, like just like thousands of years, this is the brand new thing that we've already like absolutely destroyed the places that settlers have come to after thousands of years of proper sustainable care.
And that's why I think the movie, regardless of like for sure very valid critiques, I think it at least is successful and was successful. Especially like watching old interviews and like reviews of it from when it came out. People are like, these people had a hard time. I've never, they really told that story, and I didn't think of it. I'm like, because that just wasn't in the official narrative.
It wasn't in. No, exactly. It wasn't in the popular imagination of the public, and I should say like the settler public. And so I think it does. Yeah, I agree. I think it does in the way it subverts tropes that had like these harmful tropes that had been there in American cinema, and in the way that, because it stands up to the test of time, I think it did effectively help start to change those tropes after itself.
Yeah. Now I'll give it credit for that. And then, as I said earlier, I have some kind of additional information that I found out that I was very surprised and a little saddened by. So Costner was, as told, like was welcomed in to the Sioux Lakota, like as honorary member. Not like 5 years after this movie came out, Mr. Costner and his brother owned a casino in Deadwood, and they wanted to build a resort, a big resort for the tourism that was coming into Deadwood. They made a deal with a national park that they had bought in other land that was kind of ecologically important, value, like a delicate, and they did a land swap deal with the national park to get this land that had already kind of been developed all around it to be able to build their big mega resort on. Only problem is that was stolen land from the Black Hill Lakota Sioux.
Oh, wow.
That they still had a very valid U.S. like Supreme Court ruling that said, yeah, that's their land. No treaty's been done for it. It was just taken. It was basically taken once gold was discovered in the Black Hills. They were offered like a payment settlement from the U.S. government, but they're like, no, it's our land. We want the land. The land is sacred to us. And Kevin just bought up all that land and did not really give a shit. Now that land was not, because I think there was other things that got held up, but that resort was never ever built, and I think he's since sold it now. And I think he did build a little kind of like museum to the buffalo on it eventually. Like it ended up being kind of remembering the buffalo hunt museum,
which is, I would say that in itself is incredibly problematic in and of itself. If that's where the focus like memoriam went, and so. Yeah. So here's like we talked about white liberal. You never see it coming to you. You never see yourself doing the shit. I think. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. We don't see ourselves as the villain, but I think it's that's a really important thing to come back to, especially like in everything that we're having our eyes open to right now. That at the end of the day, symbols and gestures. So even if there is a museum there or a film like this that helps tell a different kind of story, at the end of the day, if we're only concerned with gestures and stories and narratives and not with like substantial efforts at right relations, then we're kidding ourselves and we're really just being performative. And so, that you could tell this story that I think does, as we said, has important criticisms that need to be acknowledged and can have also done some good. But if at the end of the day, you're taking land instead of giving land back, miss me with that, right? Yeah. Like that's, then you might as well have, it would have been better off to have just given that land back rather than do all of the work of this movie, in my opinion. And that's what is being asked. It's being asked that and demanded that land needs to be given back to Indigenous settlers from whom it was stolen. Sorry, from Indigenous people, not settlers.
And just, again, we're not experts, but it was, when I saw that, I was like, damn, that's classic. That's just classic. Of course. Yeah. You buy your own hype and you don't see your own bullshit. And Kevin was no exception to that.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing that I didn't know that at all, and I'm glad that you brought that story up, because it has to be acknowledged when you talk about
and
this.
Honestly, I don't think it is brought up, and it's a
no, I'd never heard that.
He gets a lot of praise for the Lakota Sioux, they were appreciative of their representation, but afterwards they went, but he's on our land. So, anyways, that's the movie.
That's it.
Best review, worst review.
Hit me with
some good reviews on this movie.
Yeah, I would think.
Some people really like this movie. Hal Hinson from the Washington Post, he panned Revenge. I want to give I'm trying to connect these reviewers of that. He absolutely panned Revenge. He says, one of Costner's greatest achievements here is the balance he strikes between the film's larger strokes and its smaller ones, between the seriousness of its themes and the lightness of its approach. Costner's feel for the visceral pleasures of big screen imagery brings Kurosawa to mind, and his ability to make the landscape a character in the drama recalls both John Ford and David Lean.
Yeah, I agree with all that, especially the idea of the landscape as this character, as this, which it embodies even more significance in this story because we're seeing the land not just as this property, but as this living organism.
Yeah, I like his critique of not critique, but his notes on Costner's performance that says, as Dunbar, Costner is simultaneously the film's anchor and the leavening agent. The actor never insists on the character's heroism. Instead, he plays Dunbar as a distant relative of his character in Field of Dreams. He's a kind of prairie eccentric, a charming 19th century doofus. Which, again, I think that's just exactly why Costner is so good, is that he's able to keep the lightness of things not always need, which was one of the critiques of Revenge, right? That Revenge, looked like he was trying to harden that jaw and be the strong leading action hero. And that in this movie right away, he's he's a guy struggling his way through everything. Like the miming of the buffalo, the Tatanka is he allows himself to look foolish in the way the character would look foolish. And I think there's also a lot of the positive reviews of this movie is that people didn't see it coming. As much as Costner was a big name, people went, wait, what? Kevin Costner directed that movie. What we'll see in the negative reviews too is I'm not buying into this Kevin Costner bullshit versus the people going, oh, Kevin Costner. Maybe there's more to him than we all thought. It's an interesting, interesting parallel. Worst review comes from Pauline Kael at the New Yorker.
All right,
she
let's hear it.
Hated it.
She didn't like it.
She hated it. She starts a review off with something like, I didn't write it down, but said, one of my guy friends had to break up with his girlfriend after they went and saw Field of Dreams because she liked it. After I saw Dances with Wolves, I told him not to take his new girlfriend.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. All right. There's nothing affected about Costner's acting or directing. You hear his laid-back surfer accent. You see his deliberate, goofy feints and falls, and all the close-ups of his handsomeness. This epic was made by a bland megalomaniac. You look at that untroubled face, and you know he can make everything lightweight.
Wow, that's a shot across the bow.
And she says, crowds of moviegoers love the movie, maybe partly because the issues have been made so simple and so innocent. Costner shows us his bare ass like a kid at camp, feeling one with the great outdoors. He's the boyish man of the hour, the Orson Welles that everybody wants, an Orson Welles with no belly.
I don't even know what that last part means.
I think it means people are ready to buy into this hype because we like the idea of this guy who's a mega talent, but he gets to be a handsome, boyish version rather than the big galoot that is Orson Welles.
I want to go back and have you seen the Orson Welles commercials?
Oh yeah, the wine. The French.
The French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence.
So drunk drinking wine.
If you've never seen Orson Welles wine commercials, do yourself a favor and hit YouTube up. Stop this right now and come back to us.
It's really good.
It's great.
You see a yin and yang of those two reviews, right?
Absolutely.
One is yo, fuck this guy. He's not good, and we gotta not pretend he is. He's just a polite Hollywood version of what we want a filmmaker to be. And then somebody else being like, hey, there's no denying this, and this guy maybe this is a hidden talent.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to critique the idea that Hollywood's that Hollywood's idea of a movie is what a film is, which I think is fairly critiqued around the world. Is like this. It's not the standard.
No.
It is a particular brand, and frankly, genre.
Yes.
Hollywood is a genre that then action, comedy, drama are subgenres of
100%.
that. So I think it's fair to critique and say, this is not the standard. But I think it's a ridiculous assertion to say, this guy isn't good, and there's nothing substantially quality in this movie.
I agree there, but there's some reviews that just say like there's no filmmaking in this movie. Like the reviews said that this is not a movie made by a filmmaker.
Yeah, and I mean like that's and I would say to the extent of like sure that would be true as someone like this is his directorial debut, and although it might be the high watermark of that, it's fair to say there are things that experienced filmmakers would have done differently. Like he is at this point, he's a rookie director of something like this.
Yeah.
But to me, that speaks to the opposite. The fact that this is his first time behind the camera in that way, under such a massive and massive in scale and in depth of story, like production, I think it speaks the other way.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to how much talent he does have right from, 1990.
Hey, I agree.
But you know what? I think we're a little biased. We seem to like the guy.
Yeah. Even though we tried to build a fucking hotel on a native land.
Yeah,
I'll keep bringing that up. Because we huff, like I said, we huff some Costner farts on this podcast, and we gotta. Sometimes they're too sinky, and we gotta go. I can't huff that.
No one make an Instagram post out of that. No one make a meme out of that.
Yeah. All right. Now there aren't a lot of who could have Kevin'd. I think Viggo Mortensen was actually considered early on.
Yes. Yeah. I agree, because I think that there was definitely, I think, a push and a pull of, okay, well, you want to direct this, fine, but here's who you want to star in it. Or, okay, you want to star in it, fine, but here's who we want to direct it, which I think is a normal process when producers want to try and kind of throw their ideas around of how it should be. Viggo was I read as well, was one that was considered for this.
And a lot of what Kevin could have, because he was a man in demand at this point. I'll tell you, none of these are better than Dances with Wolves. Dances with Wolves was the right choice. The Bonfire of the Vanities, reuniting with Brian De Palma, legendarily bad movie. I've never seen it, but people talk like that's the movie that kind of killed De Palma. There was like a De Palma, Scorsese, all those guys kind of who could make the better film. Bonfire of the Vanities kind of set it straight in the same year as Goodfellas. It was like, okay, Scorsese better than De Palma. Dick Tracy. I don't know who he would play in Dick Tracy. Whether it would be Dick Tracy.
I would think
like
so,
that,
yeah.
That has to be it. Maybe Sam Ketchum would be too small a part for Costner at this point, I think.
I would think it would be, because the level that he's elevated himself to now, he's a leading.
I think
man.
Warren Beatty directed and produced Dick Tracy, so maybe that was the thing of like, oh well, maybe you shouldn't also be in it. So maybe it was for Dick Tracy. The Hunt for Red October, which I think he would have been great in. Yeah,
and again, we're seeing lots of the same actors coming up again that are the young leading men, the Alec Baldwins, the Harrison Fords, that keep coming up.
Harrison Ford, presumed innocent, he turned down, which is also a Harrison Ford film. He chose right to follow his bliss and go do some Dances with the Wolves. All right, this should be an easy one. Kevin in Memoriam. What do you got? What's getting played?
I'm gonna give honorable mention to his butt circa 1989.
Yeah, you gotta get one butt shot in for sure.
If you could do a cast of that, I think his butt in this movie, as even the bad reviewers have to admit, it's there and it's staring.
So we're gonna make the in memoriam. We are gonna do an edit of the in memoriam reel that we do, and we should just do.
Well, I think we're gonna build a physical museum.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we should. Yeah. And we should also just make a butt reel for Kevin Costner.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I hope I haven't watched Yellowstone yet, so I hope there's some elder butts to come.
Also, I just want to say, Yellowstone. I've watched Yellowstone, and literally part of the plot of that show is people wanting to build a giant casino resort on native land. Like that's literally the plot of the show.
Come on, too close to home now here. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So okay, in terms of in memoriam, I think there's just like a lot of like props in here.
Not props. In memoriam.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking our Kevin Costner Smithsonian. That's what I was talking about with the butt. Oh yeah.
What, we're just gonna have his butt in the museum?
Yeah, exactly. Like a cast of his butt, and like behind a glass, a cast of it behind a plexiglass thing, and just like, and there won't even be a plaque. You just have to know when you walk in.
I just thought
like, what's that butt doing there, son? I'm going to show you a movie.
When he dies, we're going to like get him stuffed and have the butt.
Not the real one. just a mold of the butt.
This episode took a turn.
Yeah, it really did. Sorry, yes, the in memoriam. I think I would put in, even though I think it's just an iconic visual, is him on the horse at the beginning with his arms stretched. I think you see that, and like, even though it's not the maybe the iconic scene of the whole movie, I think you see that, and it floods you then with memories of this movie, like all over the place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think I would go with that. It's also got Cisco in it.
I think I got to put in the buffalo hunt, Got to put in that buffalo hunt. That buffalo hunt is sick. And then maybe just him doing the Tatanka miming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now your Hall of Fame, the butt cast. Are we going to go with the plaster butt?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the butt cast. I'm gonna stick with the butt cast. There's a lot of places I could go.
We had a dog in the last one. We had old Rocky. You don't want a nice stuffed two socks. Like,
oh man, yeah,
some taxidermy of two socks.
We're racking up a lot of dead canines, and it's starting. We might just have to have a whole separate wing of taxidermied animals from Costner movies.
No, I think would be good. I think just the journal. I think the journal would be nice.
The journal's good.
Put the journal in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put the journal in. All right, MVP. Who you got, Adam?
I'm debating between. I think that I am going to give honorable mention to Kevin as the director here, because I do think it's an incredible filmmaking, and I think not just that. To be able to do something like the buffalo scene, which is this huge action set piece, and then the depth of like the character work that goes into this and structuring this. I think this is a hard movie in a lot of ways to put on film, and I think it works so well as a movie. But I think I'm going to give it to Mary McDonnell. I think her performance is outstanding. And although I agree, I don't think like necessarily it might be the anchor of the film. I just think that every time she's on screen, I think she makes every scene better. And I think that the chemistry that she brings alongside Costner is it just grounds it in a movie that could otherwise you would go, does it really need this like love story as part of it? It never feels like something that's like tacked on, even though it's not necessary to what's going on in this movie. I think that she brings it to another level. So I'm going to go with Mary McDonnell.
Yeah, I think. I was toying with David Semler, the cinematographer, but I know some people could say his performance is maybe a little bland, but this I actually think is the movie, because Revenge, I think there was a bit still pushing. I think this is the movie where Kevin, as an actor, both settles in so wonderfully. Yeah. And as a director, I gotta give it to Kevin. So I've been pretty kind to giving Kevin the MVP in a lot of these, but I'm going to stick with that trend because I bet you soon it's not going to be the case. So I'm going to give it to him.
I mean, we got to like make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go with our boy K-Cos on this.
If we want to get him on here, then,
we can't bring up that whole hotel thing anymore.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he's not going to want to hear that. Mm-hmm. Adam, we're into our power rankings. What did you have give me your Costner score on this?
Yeah, my Costner score on this, I didn't feel, and maybe because I felt I kind of already had that moment with around Bull Durham and Field of Dreams. So for me, this isn't like that kind of standout where he settles into who he is as a performer. I kind of treat Revenge as a little bit of an aberration, but I would give my Costner score for this. I would give an 8.4.
8.4.
8.4.
Dude, we're psychically linked here.
Oh wow.
And what about for the movie?
For the movie, I would I'd go even a little higher than that. For the movie, I would give it 8.8.
8.8. Damn.
I just think there's so much that works about it, and it stands. I think it does as a piece of American cinema. I think for me, it's near Field of Dreams, and I think in the consciousness of like American cinema, I think it stands probably as the standout.
Yeah, I gave it 8.4 for Costner and 8.5 for the movie.
Oh yeah. Well, there we go. We're really close.
Topping our list with an 8.52. We've got Dances with Wolves coming in ahead of Bull Durham at 8.38.
So just
and truthfully, I think that's right. I think Bull Durham is maybe one of the most iconic Costner roles, and is just him in such his element. But Dances with Wolves is him pushing himself and succeeding admirably. So you got to give
absolutely.
It that. Oh, and you listeners, it's the end of our first season. We're going to take just another 1 month break. We're going to come back in January, but we kind of put an addendum to the power rankings because me and Adam had some disagreement. So did Vic Michaelis.
I was going to say, I didn't have much disagreement with you except for our dear friend who I love just absolutely tanking my favorite movie.
So once at the end of the season, we have given each of me and Adam the ability to increase one movie score we want by 0.5.
Just by 0.5.
Just by 0.5.
And only a movie score from that season.
And only, yeah.
So after the season, I cannot every season just try and notch Field of Dreams higher and higher.
No, you can't do that.
This is a one-time amendment or addendum.
Addendum. So Adam, what do you want to change by 0.5?
I think unsurprisingly, I believe that Field of Dreams deserves another 0.5. I don't know if that'll have it past Fandango.
It will. So Field of Dreams goes from 7.11.
It makes me feel much
to
better.
7.61. Still behind No Way Out.
Out.
And because this was our first bitter argument of a movie. I'm gonna give some love to American Flyers, to Davey and Marcus Summers. I think it's a funner movie. I think it's worth a watch, and I'm bumping it up from a 4.25 to a 4.75, and it's going to pass.
Will that put it above Francis?
It passes Francis because Kevin Costner's not in that movie. Like you got it.
Yeah, which I think is okay. I think both of those are fair.
Yeah.
I think both of those are fair.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're going to be back with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, January 1st. We really appreciate you all listening for this first season of ours. It's been a blast to do this. We love Kevin as much as you do. Yeah, we got some other stuff we're gonna be brewing, so we'll let you know.
Yeah, and now that the first season is out, tell a friend and have them listen in, and we would love to get the old Costner medicine and more ears.
Yeah, exactly.
He's an ear medicine. I have to give my dog ear medicine sometimes. So I think that's why that came.
That's on the top of the thought box.
Yeah. But absolutely, we were super grateful for everybody who's been listening and commenting and just sending the love. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're honestly genuinely surprised when we started this stupid podcast that anyone would listen, and we've got people all over the world listening.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy. Yeah. So if you're in Malaysia right now, thanks for loving Kevin Costner.
We've got a Malaysia.
Oh
listener.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
You can see the.
I see the whole map.
So yeah, that's season 1 in the books.
All right,
and we will see you in season 2 with Robin Hood in just a couple of months.
Yeah. Thanks all.
Talking swing vote, Wyatt Earp and JFK.